Welcome. I am so glad you are here. A podcast with a grateful twist on life's disruptions and hardest moments. I will be sharing inspiring stories of resilience featuring women who have overcome incredible adversity. I hope you find comfort and inspiration as we learn and grow together. I thought it was important for me to tell my own story before I ask other women to open up and share some of their life's hardest moments. I encourage you to continue and join me on this mission to uplift women everywhere. In this first episode, I will be both your host and the guest, sharing my story of a life lived on borrowed time. Let's talk about it. Hello, I'm glad you are here. This is Tanya Boggs. Welcome to my first podcast. I thought it would be important for me to share my story, so I'm going to kick us off this week. It was 1992. I was sitting in a doctor's office on the crinkly paper that lays on the table, nervous, worried, because she was going to tell me what my life expectancy was, how long she thought I would live. I was surprised when she came in the room and she told me that there was a group of people who were surviving 15 and 20 years with fundamentally no immune system. They didn't understand why, but she felt like in my lifetime, they wouldn't have a cure, but they would be able to stop the train in its tracks. I was 21 years old, and she made an impression on me with that statement. So let's go back 2 weeks. I am at work on a Friday afternoon, and I get a phone call from another doctor's office. The nurse told me that the doctor wanted to see me to give me my HIV results. I knew how that story was going to end that day. When I got there, I wasn't sure who was more shaken up, the doctor who was delivering the message or me. I remember as he said the words, I was crying and I said, I'm never going to get married and have a baby. I was devastated. Here I am, 33 years later. I was married for 20 years. I have a 29-year-old daughter. And I feel like I've been living a life on borrowed time. And I think every day is a great day to be alive. I remember after my diagnosis, I was talking to my father. I had a first date scheduled that night, and he told me I should cancel my date. And I remember immediately responding and said, I'm absolutely not going to cancel my date, because the moment I change the way that I'm living my life is the moment that I lose the battle. Those were two really pivotal moments for me. Being at the first doctor's office, getting the news, and refusing to cancel my first date that night, even though I had been gutted just a couple of hours earlier. And being in the second doctor's office, who would go on to be my caregiver, and her giving me the news that people were living longer, I chose that day to be one of those people. So those were very big, pivotal moments for me, where I made a decision. Now, just because I made a decision doesn't mean that I wouldn't, end up dying, but I just decided I was going to push against that thought. Around the time I got my diagnosis, I had just discovered photography and I was in love. At that point, I was working a corporate job at a management consulting firm, and I was their training director. But I knew already that I wanted to go to school for photography, and that was what I wanted to do. And so the diagnosis just gave me more momentum to really chase my dreams. If I was going to have limited time on this earth, I was going to enjoy every moment of it. that was a decision that I had definitely made. So I went on, I got my bachelor's degree. I wanted to teach college, so I went on to get my master's degree. And my photography career has stemmed from all of that. I'm still a photographer, I'm a professional photographer, and I just never gave up on myself. So, how did I get it? I was young. I was living in New York and I got it from having sex, obviously. I was not an intravenous user. I was not gay, which was sort of the two main ways they talked about you got it when back in the early 90s. So I was definitely on the margins there. The gentleman who gave it to me had been an intravenous drug user years before. He had been clean for quite a while. And so I was surprised, but I knew it was him when the doctor told me. I knew because he was the only person that was really at risk for having it that I knew. I called him. I asked him to go get a test. I called everybody, asked them to go get a test. And he's the only one that came back positive. He was devastated. He was scared. He was scared of dying. And he called me a few times and he always wanted to process it with me. He was very upset, very nervous. And I was thinking, I am not the person you need to process this with. He unfortunately died about 18 months after his diagnosis. And that was about the average lifespan they would give you back then, because they didn't really know what was going on yet. They really hadn't gotten a handle on how it was transmitted. In Africa, it was a heterosexual disease. In the United States, unfortunately, it wasn't. So it came with a huge stigma in this country, and one that scared me, but also one I wasn't going to back down from, because I was someone you didn't expect to have it. And so I thought it was important to use that to be outspoken about it and to speak out and educate people, because I didn't look like someone who would have it, or I didn't look like I was sick. So I did speaking engagements. I went to high schools and talked to kids. And everybody always said, but you don't look sick. And technically, I'm not sick. I have a virus that lives inside my body. But those early years were a roller coaster ride. I mean, emotionally, as much as I had made choices on how I was going to live, I was still scared. Fear existed. Funeral processions would go by and I would tear up. Sometimes I would just burst into tears crying, thinking, am I going to be one of those people who dies young? Is that my funeral procession that's just coming up in the future? So it definitely lived very actively in my head. And I followed the news very closely about cures and breakthroughs. And that put me on this crazy roller coaster, because it was always changing. One minute they'd have this. It was always changing. One minute they would have this great new thing, and then the next minute it was dead in the water. So after a couple of years of sort of really hyper paying attention to the news and what was going on, I noticed that it was not good for my mental health. So I decided to just sort of put it away and get my information from my doctors, because I just got tired of being on that mental roller coaster of, is it or not? Is it or not? So, yeah, it was an emotional roller coaster for the first few years. But I think over time, things shift. Our perception of things shift. Our relationships with things shift. As we mature, as we grow through something. So I started concentrating on me and concentrating on the things that I'm in control of. So I'm in control of my mental health. I'm in control of the food I put in my body. I'm in control of keeping myself healthy through exercise. So those were the kinds of things I focused on, were the things that were under my control. And I did visualizations. I remember they would count our T cells back then to see how healthy our immune system was. And so I imagined these little T's before I'd go to sleep at night, especially before I had one of those tests done. I would go to sleep thinking these T's about them going through a guillotine where they get cut in half. And so they have to grow a new arm. And so now I turned one T cell into two. And it would work. I would go and my T cells would be higher than the last time. Sometimes it's amazing what that mind-body connection can do. So, I don't think people realize the power of visualization and how much of that we can that's part of the thing we can control for ourselves. I started going to a support group, and the support groups were always of gay men, and I was the only woman. And I went to a few different groups, and I thought, where are the women? Where are the women? And so I talked to the leader of one of the groups, and I talked to my doctor, and basically they said the women don't usually go. They're at home with their partner, they're at home with their kids. Maybe they don't want to, if they got it from their partner, they don't want to make them feel ashamed of giving it to them, so they stay at home. But basically, what I heard, and my theory is that we are caregivers. So we're putting people before us. We're taking care of our family first. And because I still think sometimes, where are the women? We're taking care of our kids. We're taking care of our families. And once I had a daughter, I was the same way. I didn't need the support groups as much. I wasn't participating at that time, but my daughter and my family became my focus. And so I'm guilty of it. But back then I was starved for the women. I wanted to talk to somebody who looked more like me and was going through more of what I was going through. But I did meet some amazing people in those groups. One individual, Mark Sawyer, he was an artist, and he had designed these pins, and the proceeds to the pins, they were little pins you would stick on your lapel or wear on your shirt, and they represented HIV and AIDS. And so the proceeds of that went to research. And so I found one of these pens. I bought one. I went back and bought a couple. I gave one to my dad, and my dad was enamored by it. He was like, I want to know who makes these. This is great. And so I did some research. I found out the company and who to call, and I called. And I met Mark, and my dad wrote him a check and a donation. And him and I ended up becoming close friends. We went on to work on a project together to educate people about HIV and AIDS. We created a little pamphlet. And one thing that he taught me was how to live with dignity, how to live with HIV and AIDS and maintain your dignity. He was in active AIDS status. He had Kaposi sarcoma, which we don't see much anymore, but it's basically a skin cancer. He had one on his nose. He had one on his face. And back in the early days when people were actively dying of AIDS, you would see it more in public. Less people are dying of it now, so we don't see it very often. I can't even remember the last time I've seen someone with Kaposi. I forget the word. With Kaposi sarcoma. I can't remember the last time I've seen someone with Kaposi sarcoma. But he walked around with his head high. He was unapologetic for who he was. We would go to dinner and sit around a big table with friends, and he had a line put in, and he would have to put a little bottle that would go into his line to take his medication. And we'd be sitting in public in the middle of dinner, and he would just quietly grab what he needed and click it in and hold it in his hand or set it on the table and let his medication run without batting an eye. He had basically no immune system and lived probably longer than most people did. And it was a very sad day when we lost him. I lost a lot of friends back then, but he always left a major impact on my life and taught me so much about how to live with dignity and be unapologetic about it. So, yeah, I'm super grateful for him. Once I had a child, I felt like it wasn't just my information. The information, the more public I was about it, the more it would impact her life. And one of my biggest fears when she was born was that nobody would want to play with her. Nobody's parents would let their kid play with her. So I sort of got closeted about it until she gained control of the information and she could choose whether to tell someone or not. And she started telling people in high school, people closest to her. And she continues to share that information. And so we've both become very open about it. Yeah, so here I am telling people who've known me for years publicly about this story that they probably have never heard. My closest friends know, but there's a lot of people I love that probably don't. Well, now they do if they're watching. But the good thing is I've been places I never thought I'd go, and I've done things I never thought I'd do, and I'm 54 years old. I kept waiting for the next big event in my daughter's life. I was like, just let her graduate from high school, and I got through that. And I was like, just let her graduate from college, and I got through that. And now I'm like, just let me be there for the wedding, right? So there's always these little things I'm striving, like I just want to hit these markers with her. One, because I adore her. She's amazing. And two, because I don't want her to go through through this life young without her mother. I know she's almost 30, but I want to be there for it, and I want to be there for her. So it's still important for me to keep myself healthy and keep myself going and take care of myself the best that I can. At the beginning of my journey with HIV, after my diagnosis, things were very scary back in the 90s, but there has been so much progress over the years. It's quite amazing. The medications they offer now make it so that you can be undetectable. So if you're undetectable, it's considered that you are untransmittable. So it means that you cannot transmit to anyone else under really any circumstances. That's the current science. And it's been that way for quite a number of years. So the world has really changed in the past 33 years. And it's amazing. And that is what makes it so that this train has stopped and the progression has significantly slowed down. So I've been on medication since the beginning. It has changed and morphed over the years. There was only one drug when I was first diagnosed. Now there's multiple drugs, and you take more than one drug. There's usually a three-pronged attack, hitting the virus at three different areas where it gets into the cell, how it gets into the cell, and it stops that process. So having it stop that process on three different levels has really advanced the whole process and gotten us to a point where, undetectable is possible for most people. I've been undetectable for a very long time. I couldn't even tell you how long. So that's a little bit of information. You can always get information from local AIDS organizations. They'll be happy to talk to you and share anything. There's free tests out there if you're concerned or want to get tested. It's always a great idea if you're sexually active and not in a committed relationship to make sure that you're protecting yourself, as always, and that you're getting tested regularly for your own safety and health. The guests I'm going to have on here are going to share with us their resiliency stories, how they pick themselves up and they dust themselves off and they keep going. And it doesn't mean that we're not down in the dumps sometimes. We absolutely are. There are days I have a little pity party for myself, and then I'm like, okay, get over it. Let's go. We got things to do. So I'm not saying you can't feel the feelings. Feel the feelings as long as you need to, but keep going. Don't stop there. Don't get stuck, because there's so much to live for, and this will change. My relationship with my diagnosis has changed over the years and will continue to change. And that's one thing I always think about when I'm going through something hard. and I'm struggling, I think this will change. This will change. It will not be like this forever. So it's one thing we're guaranteed, that things will change. So one thing that has been my mission for a long time has been women. I want to support women. I want to tell women's stories. I'm a portrait photographer, so I definitely want to tell women's stories of resiliency and strength. I'm looking for women who've been through something difficult, come out the other side, and are ready to really celebrate this new version of them, this new life that they've built. Because I do think we can start over. We can begin again and create something totally different and new. And it's never too late. It's never too late for anything. And the older I get, I hear some people who think maybe it's too late in life. And I will tell you that I learned how to snowboard in my early 30s. I learned how to ride a motorcycle in my late 30s. I learned how to surf in my early 40s. I'm in my 50s now. I'm starting a podcast. Crazy. Who knew? But my mission is, as a portrait photographer, I'm also a personal branding photographer. And my mission is to help women get visible. We need to be more out there in this world. If we're going to grow our businesses, we have to be present and face forward in our business. We cannot hide from the camera. We cannot keep coming up with these excuses. I need to lose 10 pounds, or, I don't feel good about myself. Well, it's not your job to be photogenic. It's your job to show up. And we as women do not scale our businesses as quickly as men do. If women could build their businesses as quickly and scale them as quickly as men, there would be $5 to $8 trillion in the global economy. So I want to help women specifically grow their businesses. We don't value our worth the way that we should, especially in business. And we undermine and we undercharge, and we have got to stop doing that. Women leave money on the table all the time, and it's time for that to stop. So that's been one of my big missions, and I'm going to continue as long as I possibly can. I remember my mother, who used to do multi-level marketing businesses, MLMs, like Amway, Mary Kay, Tupperware. And women's financial independence is important because it's how women get out of bad marriages, abusive marriages, marriages where they were living with an addict or an alcoholic. And so that's why I think it's so important women are financially independent. And as much as I've known that, I will say that I made that mistake when I got married as well. I got comfortable being in a dual income household. And so when my marriage ended, I realized I had a lot of work to make up for. So it's a doubling down for me of really making sure women are financially independent. And it's not to say that you should not set things up financially in the marriage however you want. Your marriage is your business, and how you set it up is your business. It's nobody else's. But I just encourage us to make sure that we're financially taken care of, because no one knows what's up ahead. No one knows what's coming down the pipe. And so I think it's better that we have our own little nest egg, have our own little safety net before it's too late and we find ourselves playing catch up. The other thing I've learned is that I have lived a lot of my life in survival mode, even as a kid. That has become sort of a theme for me that I am finally taking control of. And one of the things that I've learned is that we come in this world alone and we leave this world alone. And it is our responsibility to take care of ourselves. And I know that sounds very bleak, but I don't mean it in a bleak way. It doesn't mean you can't love someone, be in a healthy marriage, have great relationships. But at the end of the day, we are responsible for healing ourselves, for putting salve on our wounds, for making the right decisions for us personally, and not letting someone else get in our way or tell us to do it differently. We'll only have ourselves to blame. The only thing and we can't let other opinions taint our vision. We need to sort of stay grounded in ourselves and not give ourselves up for other people and constantly be the caregiver. I've learned that putting on your oxygen mask first before you help someone else. It's the best advice the flight attendants give us. It's a life lesson. We cannot pour from an empty cup. Yet as caregivers, we keep trying to pour into other people while leaving ourselves at a lack. So that's why I say we're responsible for ourselves. We come in and go out alone. So take care of yourself. Do things that are good for you. Find your joy and chase it every day. There's a quote that a girlfriend of mine says that says, "We're all just walking each other home." I love that quote. I hope you will continue with me on this journey. Please follow, like, comment, and share. I'll have upcoming guests that will be telling their stories of resiliency. I can't wait to share these with you. And in the meantime, take care of you. I'm glad you are here. I'll see you next time.